The night the song was born, the city was holding its breath. Rain slid down the glass walls of a half-empty studio on the 13th floor, turning streetlights into trembling stars. Inside, Arav sat alone, headphones pressed hard against his ears, fingers hovering over the keyboard but refusing to move. The track timeline glowed on the screen, silent and unfinished. He had named the file without thinking, the words appearing as if they had always existed somewhere inside him. "I think they call this love." He laughed softly, a tired sound. Love. He didn't know when that word had stopped feeling simple. 3 years earlier, love had been a girl standing barefoot on a bus stop bench, trying to fix a broken streetlight with her phone flashlight like she could trick the darkness into leaving. Her name was Mira. They met on an ordinary evening, the kind no one remembers unless something changes everything. Arav was coming back from a failed audition, rejection still warm in his chest. Mira was late for her night shift at a bookstore cafe that stayed open until dawn for insomniacs and dreamers. When the bus broke down between stops, frustration filled the air. People complained. Someone shouted. Arav just stared out the window, feeling like the world had paused him on purpose. Mira climbed up on the bench outside, laughing at her own ridiculousness as she tried to aim her phone light at the flickering street lamp. Arav watched her, confused and amused. When she noticed him staring, she smiled instead of getting embarrassed. "Well," she said, hopping down, "darkness won't fix itself, right?" That smile did something quiet but permanent to him. They talked while waiting for the next bus, about nothing important and everything that mattered. She told him she loved old love songs and believed lyrics were secret diaries people accidentally shared with the world. He told her he made music but hadn't figured out where he fit yet. When the bus arrived, neither wanted to get on. So they didn't. That was how it started. Two strangers choosing to stay. Their relationship didn't explode into fireworks. It unfolded slowly, like a melody you don't realize you've memorized until you hum it without thinking. Mira would sit on the studio floor, back against the wall, reading while Arav experimented with sounds. Sometimes she slept there, wrapped in his jacket, while he worked through the night. Sometimes she asked questions that made him uncomfortable. "Why do you always delete the parts that feel the most honest?" she asked once. He didn't have an answer. He just knew honesty scared him more than failure. Love for them was built in small rituals, coffee at sunrise, shared earphones on crowded trains, notes left in pockets. But life didn't pause for romance. Mira was juggling 2 jobs and night classes, chasing a degree she wasn't sure would lead anywhere. Arav was chasing recognition in an industry that treated dreams like disposable demos. The first real challenge came quietly. Arav started getting noticed. A producer shared one of his tracks. A meeting turned into another. Compliments came with conditions. His sound was good, they said, but too emotional, too raw. Could he make it cleaner, more marketable, less personal? At the same time, Mira's life grew heavier. Her mother fell ill back home, medical bills stacking like unpaid emotions. She stopped laughing as easily, stopped coming to the studio as often. When she did, she was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. They didn't fight at first, they just stopped syncing. Arav would come home buzzing with possibility, talking fast about opportunities. Mira would nod, smiling, but her eyes were somewhere else. She started saying things like, "You don't have to wait for me, and this is your moment." He heard encouragement. He didn't hear the goodbye hiding inside it. The night everything cracked, Arav played her a new track. It was polished, upbeat, almost perfect. He waited for her reaction like a verdict. "It's good," she said after a pause. "Just good." "That's it?" he asked, sharper than he meant to. Mira looked at him, really looked, like she was trying to recognize someone familiar in a stranger's face. "It doesn't sound like you anymore." Something inside him snapped. "Maybe you just don't understand where I'm trying to go." The silence that followed was louder than any argument. They broke up without dramatic words. No slammed doors, just two people realizing they were hurting each other by holding on. Mira moved closer to the hospital where her mother was being treated. Arav threw himself into work, telling himself pain was productive. Success came faster than healing. SXYBIT was born as a project name, then a brand. Arav's tracks climbed charts. He performed in front of thousands, lights blinding, crowds screaming words he once whispered alone. People called him an overnight success, ignoring the years of doubt stitched into every beat. But every night after the shows, when the noise faded, the silence found him again. He tried dating, tried distractions. Nothing stayed. Every song he wrote circled the same missing shape. He avoided love songs, then realized every song was one. Meanwhile, Mira sat by hospital windows and learned the quiet courage of endurance. Her mother survived, but recovery was slow. Mira worked, studied, and carried responsibility like a second spine. She stopped listening to new music. It reminded her of a version of herself that believed things worked out neatly. Months passed, then a year. They didn't talk. But sometimes Mira heard Arav on the radio in the cafe and felt that old ache bloom, sharp and familiar. Sometimes Arav caught sight of a girl laughing under a streetlight and had to look away. The song came to him on a night like the first. Rain. Silence, a keyboard waiting. This time, he didn't chase perfection. He let the chords stumble, let the melody breathe. He sang about waiting at broken bus stops, about love that doesn't shout but stays, about losing someone not because you stopped loving them, but because you didn't know how to love them right. I think they call this love, he sang, like the words were a question instead of a claim. When the song released, people felt it before they understood it. Messages flooded in, strangers saying it sounded like their story, like their loss, like their hope. Mira heard it accidentally, late at night, the cafe empty. She froze behind the counter as the song wrapped around her. Tears came without warning, not from sadness, but recognition. He had found his honesty again. Weeks later, Arav saw her name on his phone. Just one word. Hi. They met where it had all begun, at the same bus stop. The streetlight was fixed now, glowing steady and unremarkable. They stood awkwardly at first, older, changed, but familiar. I heard the song, Mira said. I wrote it for you, he replied, then corrected himself. I wrote it because of us. They talked about mistakes, about fear, about how love doesn't disappear just because people grow apart. They didn't promise anything. They didn't rewrite the past. They chose honesty. Love, they realized, wasn't about perfect timing or sacrifice without boundaries. It was about meeting each other as whole people, not unfinished dreams leaning for support. When they parted that night, there was no certainty of a fairy tale ending. But there was peace. The song continued its journey, reaching millions. And somewhere between the beats and the silence, it carried a message that lingered long after the last note faded. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet understanding, a choice to grow, a courage to let go, and the strength to return when you're ready. I think they call this love.